Welcome to the show, ladies and gentlemen. You are watching MCJ Report number 124. I'm your host, Morgan C. Jonas. I hope that everybody is having a nice evening. I'd like to welcome everybody tuned in across Rumble and on YouTube. Please go ahead and share the broadcast out. We need to get the word out there as far and wide as we possibly can. Here at MCJ Report Independent Media, we are talking about the topics otherwise left untouched by the mainstream media. You can't rely on the mainstream media here in Australia to give you an honest perspective or to cover the entire truth. So please go ahead and share it. There should be a little share icon, perhaps in the bottom right-hand corner of the Rumble app. And there's also a share icon if you're watching on YouTube as well. So I hope that everybody is doing really well. I can see some of you in the comments right now, a lot of familiar usernames. Welcome to the show. You could be doing anything right now, but you're not. You're watching MCJ Report, and I very much appreciate that. So on the agenda for this evening, we've got a few things to talk about. Okay, first of all, this is mostly in relation to the people of Victoria, but absolutely applies to the entire country, and I'd say the entire world, because the actions of Daniel Andrews are indicative of the direction that many nations are heading, subject to the new so-called COVID normal or the new normal or whatever phrase is popular on any given day by the government. That's right. So Daniel Andrews, Premier of Victoria, is seeking to implement essentially permanent pandemic legislation. We're going to have a talk about that. The state of emergency isn't enough for him. Daniel Andrews is seeking permanent control and permanent authority to lock Victoria down, but it doesn't end there. The measures also proposed by Daniel Andrews includes, but are not limited to, jailing people and issuing huge fines for offences that would ordinarily be considered summary offences. So we're going to have a talk about that. It's very concerning. And should this legislation go through in full effect, it very well could be the nail in the coffin for freedom in Victoria. Also, Moderna, that's right, Moderna, that has been suspended in various countries around the world, particularly in relation to the approval status for young people. What are they doing here in Victoria? They're rolling out injection hubs in Victorian schools. So we're going to have a big talk about that. It's not being spoken about enough, and we're going to shine a big light on it. Also, we have some updates from regional Victoria. That's right. I will be introducing a new commentator on MCJ Report tonight covering events from regional Victoria. So we're very excited about that. And we also have a great homegrown Aussie rock artist by the name of Rob Wolfe, Music. He's released a new Freedom song, which I think is absolutely awesome and something that can hopefully boost our mood a little bit, because of course it's very easy to get a little bit down, let's call it, when you've got an absolute pack of grubs running this country. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, let's get this show on the road, shall we? So if you've just tuned in, you're watching MCJ Report. I'm your host, Morgan C. Jonas. Please go ahead and give this broadcast a share and let's get it started. All right, now first of all, Telegram. I'll give the obligatory shameless self-plug, right? Telegram, the most important tool of our time. No matter where you are in the world, if you're looking for protest action or uncensored information, Telegram is the place to be. And while you're at it, you can give me a follow. My username is Morgan C. Jonas. All right, ladies and gentlemen, Daniel Andrews' bid to implement permanent control intensifies. That's right. So what exactly are we talking about here? Here in the state of Victoria, and I'm sure there are other proposals for legislation like this, perhaps throughout the country and most definitely around the world, Daniel Andrews is seeking I suppose you could call it like a permanent state of emergency, whereby the government of the day will retain the executive power to, on a whim, based on their so-called advice, right? Advice from experts or people that are handpicked by the government or something like that. The authority to shut the city down, impose travel restrictions, social distancing, mask mandates, injection mandates, and the list goes on and on and on. So this is particularly concerning, okay? It's already been tabled in Parliament. So we're going to be calling on the Victorian public to put pressure on some key crossbenchers in the Legislative Council. Now, these members in the upper house, they've let us down multiple times before. We think about the extension to the state of emergency. So we think to ourselves, our concerns are falling on deaf ears. Well, that very well may be the case, but what is also the case is that there is nothing to lose by at least trying, and I think that we should at least try. You see, with the proposal for this permanent pandemic legislation, Daniel Andrews is seeking to remove many of the functions of the Chief Health Officer. Okay? Now, I know that a lot of us don't give Brett Sutton credit for much at all, or anything at all, but what this shows is that Daniel Andrews is so blatant that he is actually trying to assume the power of a so-called Chief Health Officer to enable him to have the authority to shut the state down and to impose these freedom-destroying policies. That's right. In addition to that, the Chief Health Officer will no longer be needed under this proposal to sign off on the so-called health directions. That's right. That role will be handballed to the Health Minister. Okay, so you've got a Premier, you've got a Health Minister. As far as I'm aware, neither of the two have a background in health. Okay, they appear to me to be more like salespeople for the big pharmaceutical corporations, and they appear to me to be only interested in assuming more and more power. I say they're drunk on power, and enough is never enough. That's right. As the old saying goes, absolute power corrupts absolutely, and without any shadow of a doubt, that's what we're witnessing in Victoria. The power of which Daniel Andrews has fraudulently, I got there in the end, assumed, he's not going to give it up. All right, so let's take a little bit of a look at this, shall we? Let's take a little bit of a look. So what do we have here under this proposal? This freedom-destroying proposal that is a disgrace to the Australians that came before us. We have a permanent state of emergency, all right? So essentially, Daniel Andrews doesn't need a show anymore. Just, all right, I'm going to lock you down. I'm going to stop you from going here, going there. Premier granted power to declare state of emergency, Health Minister to sign off on directions. Chief Health Officer not needed, essentially. Up to 2 years jail time and a $90,000 fine for offenders, all right? So people the government considers to be dangerous or maybe likely to spread the virus, right? To spread the virus that has an infection fatality rate of, do you remember what it is? it's extremely, extremely small. That's right. That's right. They want you to believe it's for your health and safety, yet they will not address the true mortality rate of this virus, because if they did, they would lose the ability to instill fear in the hearts of the population, and fear is an integral ingredient to this corrupt government maintaining control over the population. So fear must be pushed at every angle. Businesses to face up to a $455,000 fine. Okay, so who may these penalties apply to? Maybe protest organizers, maybe people attending protests, who knows? Maybe somebody who met with too many people in a park, maybe a group of people that met in a park, but they had not been double injected. The terminology is very broad. There is tremendous scope for abuse, and this is most definitely a consolidation of power that government should never hold in their hands. The solution to health and well-being does not rest in the government. It rests in we as Australians, we as individuals, right? You don't need to be a doctor to understand the benefits of sunlight, keeping a healthy diet, exercising, and taking precautionary measures to ensure that we're safe. We don't need the government doing this for us. What this legislation tells me is that the government is saying a few things. First of all, what they're saying is that Victorians are absolutely stupid and will be willing to stand by and do nothing whilst the government tramples all over our rights. And it also says that the government is seeking to take a position of the sole provider of health and safety, okay? I mean, what an absolute disgrace. Let me ask you a question. When we think about the biggest atrocities that have been committed throughout the world, throughout humanity, were they committed by civilian groups or were they committed by governments? They've always been committed by governments, and they always will continue to be committed by governments. We see the inception of various authoritarian takeovers throughout the world, and they all seem to have something in common. The stripping away of citizens' rights is almost always done under the guise of safety or health, or there's some type of threat that needs to be neutralized. In this case, it's the threat of a deadly virus that has a survival rate of well and truly beyond 99%. Anyway, so what does this all come down to for us Victorians? It really all comes down to these four people. That's right. These four members of the Legislative Council. That's right. Former Labor politician Adam Somyurek. That's right. Of course, he was kind of forced to leave Labor after the whole branch stacking thing. He seems to like speaking up on Twitter. It seems like he has something to say. But Adam, what this really comes down to is how you vote. Okay? You have proclaimed that you'd like to do the right thing by the Victorian people. So we are calling on you to do the right thing and to oppose this assault, this legislation that you know will end freedom as we know it. We see Samantha Ratnam from the Greens, Andy Medic, and of course, Fiona Patten. Okay, so it really all comes down to these four crossbenchers and how they choose to use their votes. What do you think, ladies and gentlemen? Now, they've all let us down in the past. So I'm not holding out hope on any single one of those individuals. Okay? But there is something that you can do, because doing something is absolutely better than doing nothing. Who here agrees with that? Okay, so what do we have here? What am I showing you? This is from Reignite Democracy Australia. I've put the link in the description. It says here, say no to permanent pandemic legislation. What you can do is what you can do to immediately protect Victorians' rights. Okay, so the link is in the description. It says here, click here for the Reignite Democracy contact list, and you can send emails just to these four crossbenchers in question. Okay, this is not a guaranteed solution. I would say the odds are heavily stacked against us, but it is at least worth a try. If you'd like me to forward you this link from Reignite Democracy so you can gain access to these people, or you can just look them up online, they're not hard to find. You can just go to mcjreport.com/join, put your email address in, and I'll send this document out to you. It also contains a draft letter. If you're not sure exactly what you'd like to write, you can get some ideas from that. Okay, so that just about wraps this segment for the show up. I mean, my honest belief is that should this legislation go through, Victoria as we knew it will never exist again. The government would have assumed powers to the likes of which they've never held before. Individual rights won't matter. Human rights won't matter. Informed consent will be a thing of the past. The new normal will be lockdowns, gathering limits, and the long-term imprisonment of people who express dissent. That's right. This is truly the beginning of a terrible time in Victoria. But at the end of the day, this is our home and we need to do what we can to defend it. All right, moving along here, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, so who here knows about this? This is an absolute disgrace. Moderna hubs to be rolled out in Victorian schools. Now, ladies and gentlemen, Craig Kelly, the honourable member of the House of Representatives, pointed out in Parliament the other day that Moderna for young people, for children, is not approved by the FDA over in the United States. We also know that the Moderna injection for young people has been suspended across various nations, some nations in Europe, in relation to the risk of side effects, including but not limited to myocarditis. So the question remains, why is this particular product now being rolled out in Victorian schools? We know without any doubt that within the education system in Australia, teachers have been promoting the products of the pharmaceutical corporations to children for a long time now. We know that COVID is a regular discussion in the classroom. We hear topics such as COVID champion, that's right. And we'll have more to say about that very soon. So given this information, how is it that the TGA said, let's give this injection a provisional approval, and why is the government allowing Moderna hubs to be rolled out in schools? Here's how I see it, right? You've got pro-vaccine teachers, okay, that have been really pushing these products for a long time now, talking about all the benefits and how it's so safe and effective and how you can save your grandparents, etc. Okay, so let's just call it what it is. It's brainwashing, plain and simple. It's indoctrination, it's brainwashing. Okay, we see the removal of parental consent here in Victoria under the excuse of mature minor, the mature minor designation. Essentially the government coming out and saying that, hey you parents, you think you have rights over your child? You don't, we do. We are the ones, we the government will decide whether or not your child is mature enough to make a decision whether or not they want to participate in what the Federal Health Minister referred to as the world's largest clinical trial. Those were the words of Greg Hunt. It is without a doubt that this particular drug can be described as experimental in nature. And it is also without a doubt that given the constant propaganda, informed consent has completely been thrown out the window. It's disgraceful enough when we're talking about adults. But children, this is a new low. And my firm suggestion to parents all around Australia and around the world is keep the government the hell away from your children. I make no reservations about saying that. Now, what do we have here? I'm going to show you some documents published in the British Medical Journal. Okay, so this isn't just some website that fell out of the sky. This is the BMJ. Look at this. COVID-19. Sweden, Norway and Finland suspend use of Moderna vaccine in young people as a precaution. Okay, goes on to say, at a press conference on the 6th of October, epidemiologists at the Swedish Public Health Agency explained the suspension of the Moderna vaccine followed the detection of signals of an increased risk of side effects such as myocarditis and pericarditis. So we look to the United States where this particular product is manufactured and we say, all right, well, let's see what the FDA says. FDA delays decision on Moderna's COVID vaccine in 12 to 17 age group because of myocarditis concerns. Okay, and that is via the Wall Street Journal. Yet we come back here to Australia and we see the Therapeutic Goods Administration. Okay, I don't know what they do all day. I think they sit around pretending that they are reviewing certain drugs for provisional approval. TGA approval of Moderna COVID-19 vaccine to include 12 to 17 years age group. And now we see these Moderna hubs being rolled out in schools. There's a reason why this particular injection is being suspended in various countries around the world. Okay, and there's a reason why the FDA was forced to suspend the approval. So we have a look over here. What do we have here? We have the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System. I conducted a search specifically for young people, searching specifically for adverse events in the Moderna injection, and it received just under 6,000 total results. Again, mcjreport.com. You can go and put your email address in. I'll send it out to you. There are reports in here of little babies less than 1 year old. 1 year old. Why were they ever injected in the first place? You can spend all day reading through these horrible adverse reactions. All in the meanwhile, our government is ignoring it. That's right. We did a segment the other day on the infection fatality rate for young people, children, when it comes to COVID-19. And we found figures such as 0.002%. That's right. And perhaps even those deaths are questionable. It's been common knowledge for a long time. The information is out there, published by the likes of nature.com, highly esteemed online journal, pubmed.gov. The list goes on and on and on. Yet the government wants to convince everybody that children are at risk, therefore they all need to be injected. I mean, we are absolutely at the forefront of something so twisted, so sick. We as Australians must band together. And as I said, if you're a parent, keep your children away from the government right now. We need to change this government. The people that work behind the walls of work within the walls of our parliaments, they don't care for you. They care about their careers. They care about towing the party line. They care about their endorsement come next election. They will trade away your freedom, your safety, your dignity, and the dignity of your children in exchange for a lousy paycheck. And that indeed is most definitely a huge problem that we are facing in our country, and we must stamp it out. All right, now, clearly parents are concerned about this. Many of my supporters are concerned about this. Several have reached out to me to express their concerns. One of them, a supporter, but also a good friend of mine, Andrew Philippopoulos, Melbourne-based father. He has been engaging in a series of back and forth correspondence with the school of his children. What Andrew's asking for is not unreasonable. He simply wants to ensure that he will maintain his parental rights and that under no circumstances his children will be injected with a COVID-19 jab against his will, against his consent. Now, it's been very difficult for Andrew. He has really taken many measures to communicate, to liaise. But unfortunately, his concerns, time and time again, are falling on deaf ears. We had Andrew on the show some time ago, and he'll be making regular appearances on MCJ Report to discuss this matter, because this is simply not going away. Now, I speak to other of my supporters. They're also concerned. I know of several parents who are actually pulling their children out of schools, okay? Which I understand. Months worth of propaganda, mature minor designation, vaccine hubs rolling in. I mean, wake up, Australia. This is not normal. This is an assault on children. Now, the next clip that I have for you here features Andrew, but it also features a wonderful individual, barrister at law, Raymond Broomhall, based in Tasmania. Raymond has embarked on tremendous work advocating and standing up and fighting back against this lunacy that has plagued our country since the inception of Corona. I'll have a lot more to say very soon about the work of which Raymond is engaged in right now. I can tell you that he is a man of integrity, and I'm most definitely proud to have him on MCJ Report. Now, the clip I have for you goes for about 19 minutes. It's a discussion between myself, Andrew, and Raymond in relation to this very, very concerning notion that we are addressing today. I'm going to play it for you right now. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have with us Andrew and Raymond. Welcome to the broadcast, gentlemen. Much appreciated. Now, Andrew, as mentioned in our opening monologue, you have experienced this very issue that we are discussing today. So would you mind telling us a little bit more about your experience so far with the school?
Thank you, Morgan, and great to be on the show again. And hello to Raymond, and thanking him for his time. Morgan, just to give you a recap as to the last time I was on the show, my personal experience as a parent was quite worrying. I initiated contact with my children's school and sent them a constitutional non-consent form so that if and when jabs are ever brought to the schools, they're not to touch my children. My emails and concerns were basically not responded to, and I was told not to worry and that the school would just follow mandate. I also received a phone call from the school leadership and was advised that my concerns were not really valid, as these things will not happen on school grounds due to how state governments are rolling out, facilitating the vaccines at clinics, doctors, GPs, and drive-in hubs. Lo and behold, fast forward a month or so, I've received notice that there'll be not 1 but 2 Moderna clinics on the school grounds. So all of a sudden my concerns have come to fruition. And though they have stated that it will be with parental consent, I do have concerns as my notices were not really accepted. And when questionable mistakes were made in other states, such as New South Wales, where children were accidentally jabbed with an experimental vaccine, the response from the bureaucrats when asked about this was a blunt, so what? So as a parent, I do have concerns. The goalposts are moving very rapidly. My concerns one day are considered not valid, and the next day they're fast forward and they're much worse, in my opinion, than my initial worries.
Yeah, thank you very much for that description, Andrew. Now, Raymond, is there anything you'd like to comment on some of Andrew's experiences and concerns?
Yes, without giving actual legal advice, I can give you a general opinion as to how I see the play of the law as it affects everyone. Technically, the way I see it is that if anyone's put any notice on the Education Department or any member of the Education Department as to non-consent to medical treatment, that's enough. The notice is enough, regardless of whatever response has been come back from the other side. And that's the issue. As soon as notice is given, that's that. far as I'm concerned. But I think the most important thing that needs to be expressed is that the Australian government's Australian Immunisation Handbook, which is the guideline for all immunisation providers such as doctors, nurses, and pharmacists who administer the COVID-19 vaccine, must, and I'll just read this to you. This is exactly straight from the Immunisation Handbook, and it says this: preparing for vaccination, immunisation providers should screen people before vaccination and obtain valid consent, and ensure that the correct equipment and procedures are in place before vaccination. So the key point there is the valid consent principle. Now, the issue here is that does what we call a mature minor or a child have competency to give valid consent? Now, the law is quite clear on valid consent issues. It's also can be a grey area in regards to what we call Gillick competence. Now, I'll just explain to your viewers what Gillick competence is. And Gillick competence is a term that originated in England and Wales, and it's used in medical law to decide whether a child is able to consent to their own medical treatment. Now, and that's usually without the need of parental permission or knowledge. Now, the decision is the standard is basically based on a House of Lords decision, which was done in 1985, and it's in respect to a NHS doctor in a case called Gillick against the West Norfolk and Wisebeck Area Health Authority. Now, the case is binding in England and Wales and has been adopted in varying extents in Australia. So now the Australian High Court gave specific and strong approval for the Gillick decision in Marion's case. And the Marion's case is quite not well known in Australian law. And the Gillick, so in essence, the Gillick competence through Marion is part of Australian case law. But what's really important is that there is no express authority in Australia as to whether a parent's right terminates. And this lack of authority reflects that the reported cases have all involved minors who have been found to be incompetent, and that Australian courts will make decisions in the parent's patrie jurisdiction regardless of Gillick competence. So what that means is that most of the cases have shown that a minor is not competent in order to give valid consent. Now, there is, in both South Australian and New South Wales legislation, it sort of clarifies the common law to some extent, which establishes a Gillesque standard of competence, but preserves concurrent consent between parent and child for the ages of 14 to 16. Now, a parent's concurrent consent with a child under 18 is unclear, as it doesn't appear to have been tested in most Australian jurisdictions outside of South Australia and New South Wales. So in my opinion, the Gillick competency principle could be quashed in most Supreme Courts because there's an inherent parent's patrie power that the courts could use to make decisions on behalf of the child if a parent intervenes or challenges the consent process for a medical procedure. So therefore, the way I see it, the Gillick test therefore can be challenged in most states and territories, and a legal challenge would ultimately test the evidence in regards to the competency of the child, and assessment procedures can be tested, and also the protocols behind it. Now, this could expose an immunisation provider's decision to serious challenge and on whether valid and informed consent was sufficiently given or obtained. Now, what I'm going to explain is this. The reason that this needs to be raised is because when if a vaccination was given without valid consent, it would be technically an assault or a battery under criminal law, and therefore the immunisation provider would be facing possible charges of criminal liability, and could be prosecuted to the full brunt of the law. So it's a very dangerous thing to play where you've got the state authority pushing something like this possibly on children who are not technically competent in some form to give valid consent. And if the valid consent has been coerced, and this is the issue, if there's any coercion or any duress or instigation to coerce people to have the vaccination, then that valid consent is removed. That's how it works. So if a doctor goes ahead and starts to give a vaccination, the doctor should always, as a protocol, ask the patient, what is the reason why you're here and presenting for the vaccination? Are you here to be protected specifically from COVID-19 for the vaccination, or are you here for any other reason? Are you here because you have been pressured by your parents or somebody else? Are you appearing here because you have been told that if you don't get the vaccination, you will not be able to sit for exams or you will not be able to attend school? Any reason, anything that has a coercion element to it would remove valid consent. And that's the issue. So I guess, I don't know if that answers your query, but that's how I see the law as it stands at the moment.
Thank you very much for that in-depth discussion there, Raymond. Now, Andrew, did you have any questions following up on some of the points raised by Raymond?
I do, Morgan, and thank you for your input there, Raymond. And you brought up a very important point, which relates to the Hippocratic Oath in regards to informed consent. As we all know, I'm sure, this topic is spoken about 24/7 in all forms of mainstream media, current affairs, social media, and politicians, and the list goes on. What I've also noticed in my case is the schools' increased and continual discussion regarding COVID vaccines, their advertising of it in communications, and most importantly and more seriously, we have now heard consistently live teachers speaking to children about this topic, teachers speaking in a very persuasive way regarding, are they vaccinated? Are they going to be vaccinated? Are your parents vaccinated? And my concerns are that subject matter, whether it be maths, English, etc., should be the subject matter of the class. I'm sure we can all understand that it's been a difficult couple of years and children have missed out on an abundance of face-to-face learning. And lo and behold, I've now called out particular teachers who are meant to be teaching particular subjects continuously bring this topic up to students, which is a form of coercion. And we all know that students are there to listen to the teachers and to learn. We all know that they don't do things such as maybe teach children about or do a crash course on our Australian Constitution, the Victorian Charter of Human Rights, and articles such as the Nuremberg Code. I'm starting to wonder why these things aren't being taught at school, because they're in complete violation of all three of them. But as I've mentioned, the continual discussion of this from teachers is another concern, and that adds to the coercion and the mandates that are being put in place at the moment, in addition to the restrictions that our state government and state governments elsewhere are starting to impose on the people and their liberties and their human rights. So as a parent, I wanted to share that. As I've seen it live, I've seen it firsthand, and I've seen it happening continuously. I understand there's one-off scenarios, that's with everything in life, but I've also been told that the schools are now going to be discussing COVID champions and COVID champion teachers. I think in the education system, we should be talking about education champions and maybe talking about champions for particular subjects and speak about academic improvement. But there you go.
Okay. How do I answer all that? Okay. The simple way to give a clarification, first of all, is that all of the 4 vaccines that have been are only, even though they've been telling us they're approved, they're only being provisionally approved. And provisionally approved means that technically, and you only have to look at the Therapeutic Goods Association to see that they're currently under a clinical trial. Now, the law makes it very, very clear that, and you'll find that in particular, the Australian Health Practitioner Regulatory Agency and others, and all the 15 boards that go with that, have basically said that, and there are other provisions, but basically the situation is that a clinical trial, you must get voluntary consent. That's an important factor in that. Now, voluntary consent must be done without coercion or manipulation. And if it's tainted with that, then it's no longer valid consent. Now, the biggest concern I have is even the word mandatory. The word mandatory means to be obligated by authority in some form. It certainly removes automatically voluntariness. It removes one person's free will to go with it. So technically, mandatory is not voluntary. And the very fact that the word mandatory is used significantly departs from accepted professional standards that are used by medical practitioners. And technically, as far as I'm concerned, it lacks evident and intelligible justification, and therefore is an abuse of power conferred upon most chief medical officers, for example. And I find it's extremely unusual that the chief medical officers of this country would promote mandatory vaccination, knowing full well that it's not voluntary, and particularly these people are registered medical practitioners under AHPRA. They would have to comply with what we would call accepted professional standards. Now, the acceptable professional standards is that valid consent must be obtained before an injection is given, and therefore, clearly, by pushing the mandatory narrative, automatically removes voluntary consent.
Definitely. I've got a question, if I may, Raymond. I suppose maybe a little bit more of a hypothetical, but there's many parents, I should say, in Andrew's position right now who are concerned about the state designation of a mature minor, concerned about losing their parental consent, and ultimately concerned about their child in school being injected with one of these provisional injections. What could parents potentially do, or if I could ask you, what might you do if you were facing a situation where perhaps you were concerned about losing parental consent over your children?
Well, I'd certainly, as a parent, and I have four daughters, I would, I guess you could say, if it was me, I would certainly contact the school and the Department of Education and inform them that if they're going to proceed with any medical procedure with my child, that I need to be informed, first of all, that medical procedure is going to be made available in some form. But I'd also say that I would like, if I have a consensual issue, I don't consent to it, for example. It might be, I'm not saying whether I'm pro or not, but I would say that in the circumstances, if I didn't want my child to be experimented upon under a clinical trial, I would certainly let them know that I don't agree to that, and that they are to contact me immediately. And if not, then I would challenge any competence and in regards to a coercion issue in regards to valid consent. But I guess to try and put in a nutshell, I would put them on notice that I don't want my child to be vaccinated.
Thank you very much for that insight. Now, Raymond, we're very conscious of your time. Andrew, do you have any final thoughts or maybe something else you'd like to ask?
No, thanks, Morgan, and thank you both for your time. My last comment and message will be to create awareness. As parents, we all love our children, and further to that, we have a moral and an ethical duty to look after them. It's a shame that these battles are here in front of us right now, Morgan. But the one that I'm willing to fight for our kids. This is not about being pro or against vaccinations. I just would like my children to not partake in experiments. These are the times that we're in, and I'll do everything in my power and control to look after them. And I think it's important that these stories get shared because they're real, they're happening, and they're happening very quickly. And there will become a time will come in the future where our children will look back and they'll either ask us, did we remain silent? Did we say anything? Or there might be kids out there that might thank mum and daddy for sticking up for them when they were young, when they were vulnerable, and when they didn't have a voice.
Now, gentlemen, thank you very much for taking part in MCJ Report, and I hope to have the two of you back on the show really soon.
It's a pleasure. Thank you, Morgan.
Pleasure. Thanks, Morgan.
Thank you. All right, now a big thank you to Andrew and a big thank you to Raymond Broomhall, for your time, for your insight and your discussion. Now, ladies and gentlemen, Raymond is doing some tremendous work based in Tasmania, and he will be coming back on the show really soon to talk about some very exciting topics. So I'm really looking forward to having Raymond back on the show. And Andrew will actually be returning to MCJ Report tomorrow night in order to discuss in a little bit more detail the issues that he's facing. And I'd just like to also add in that the discussion that you just witnessed is independent of anything else that we are speaking about on this show. Okay, now let's keep this moving along, shall we, ladies and gentlemen? All right, regional Victoria, that's right. I would like to introduce you to a new MCJ correspondent, so please make him feel welcome. His name is Henk, that's right, Henk Wallenborn from Mildura, and he will be covering topics from regional Victoria. As you know, on MCJ Report, we love to hear from people from various regions. Of course, we have Sydney George doing a great job. We have Matt Dillon over in WA. And now Henk is putting his hand up to cover regional events. Okay, he will be actually attending a protest very soon to document the optics. I have a short interview with Henk. It goes for about 5 minutes. So Henk, if you're watching, welcome to MCJ Report. We're excited to have you here. So ladies and gentlemen, please make him feel welcome. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have Henk with us from regional Victoria, Mildura. Henk, welcome to MCJ Report. Now, let's just have a bit of a chat. Just talk to us a little bit about the vibe in regional Victoria, your neck of the woods. Businesses, are they discriminating? Are they not discriminating? And how is this all going down with the locals, and how are the locals responding?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and thanks for having me, Morgan. It's great to be here and to be a part of the broadcast. The feeling here in Mildura, well, I guess it's the same all over the country. It's pretty divided because you have two different kinds of people on opposite sides of the fence. But in terms of businesses and what they're going through, they're really doing, in my opinion, a fantastic job of standing by their community and reinforcing non-discrimination, because for the feel around town is that no one wants to be enforcing this, no one wants to be doing it, and it really shouldn't be the business owner's responsibility to do so anyway. So yeah, no, it's a pretty relaxed feel when you get out of the big chains.
Yeah, what sort of scenes are you seeing on a daily basis in terms of police?
Well, I'll just give you a perfect example of my drive home today. My drive home today consists of about 12 minutes. And in that 12 minutes, I saw 4 to 5 police vehicles driving around. I remember a couple of weeks ago on a Sunday, we had a bus just out the front of the police station that would have been full of officers for the region. So yeah, it's been pretty heavy-handed up here. And especially with the local member going missing at this particular moment as well, and shutting off all communications to her constituents. It's a very, very interesting time.
Okay, and who's your local member, and why do you think this member has gone missing? What's happening with that?
Well, our local state member is Ellie Cupper, and just last week, when the week and a half ago, when our lockdown got announced, she posted on Facebook stating that she was shutting off all phone lines and locking the doors because of supposed abuse that her office was receiving from the constituents. And that was just as, the harsh lockdown was announced for the community. So, yeah, it's a pretty daring indictment.
So basically she's said there's a bit of pressure and she just doesn't really want to deal with it, or do you think there's something else going on here?
Oh, well, there's certainly a lot of pressure, but I think she's just more ashamed to face her community, given the mandates and directives she's enforcing on the community.
Right, so if you had a message that you could get out to her, what would the message be?
Do your job, do what you're paid to do, and stand up for the people that are showing you that they're unhappy with what you're doing. You wouldn't be receiving these phone calls if people were satisfied with the job you were doing.
All right, now Hank, before we wrap the interview up, do you have any final messages for regional Victoria or the rest of Australia?
Absolutely. To anyone in a regional area that's feeling disconnected from all of the action, so to speak, because it's so hard to feel empowered in regional areas because you're so far away. I suggest going to Reignite Democracy Australia and joining up to their RDA Active program. That, in my opinion, is the best way to get involved in your local community because they've already done the hard work and set up the database. So if that sounds like something you'd like to do to get involved in your local community, you don't have to agree with Reignite Democracy Australia itself or its politics or its policies. It's about the community group fostering, and they do the best job, in my opinion, of doing that. So that'd be my first step. And to close this first interview off would be to do that if getting involved in your local community is something you'd like to do.
Perfect. Hank, we thank you very much for your time and we hope to have you back on the show soon. Thank you.
My pleasure, Morgan. Thank you so much.
All right, a big thank you to Hank. Welcome to MCJ Report. We are looking forward to having you back on the show and also looking forward to witnessing some of your on-the-ground work. So, ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Hank. Okay, now let's keep this moving along, shall we, ladies and gentlemen? All right, who here knows this guy? Rob Wolfe from New South Wales presents Let's Get Out of Lockdown. That's right. You know, on MCJ Report, I love to shine a light on homegrown talent. I think it is excellent to see our very own musicians creating music as a form of dissent, as a form of opposition and strong disagreement to the measures of which the government are taking, measures that, well, you know what they are, right? It's a pretty bad time. And in these bad times throughout history, people have looked to musicians to create music in opposition of the government, but we look at the mainstream artists in Australia. Where are they? Where are they? They're more likely than not doing the bidding for the pharmaceutical corporations and the bidding for these governments that are acting in a tyrannical manner, but not Rob Wolfe. That's right, Rob reached out to me the other day. I took a look at his music. I absolutely love it. So without further ado, I'm going to play for you the film clip by Rob. He's a songwriter, singer, and guitarist. Enjoy, and then afterwards, you'll hear from Rob himself.
But I'm asking people to observe that curfew from 9 p.m. tonight.
There will be opportunities for greater freedom.
Sometimes I feel like there's no way out when I'm trapped like a prisoner in my own house. They won't let me go nowhere. They want me to stay home. They want me to be scared. But I've got love, and I'll fight for freedom. 'Cause those two things are burning up inside me. So let's get out of this. tyranny, I close it in. Let's get out of this place we're in. We're getting out of this place we're in. Let's get out. Well, sometimes I feel like they're pushing so hard. When you've given them everything, it's not enough. They still won't let us go nowhere. They want us to stay home, they want us to be scared. But we've got love, and we'll fight for freedom. 'Cause those two things are burning up inside us. So let's get out of this place we're in. The walls of tyranny are closing in. We're getting out of this place we're in. Let's get out of this place we're in. Let's get out. Let's get out. I take each day as it comes, but I live with speculation. Something good is gonna happen, and I'll be sure that I am waiting to collect the prize at the end of the line. 'Cause none of us are gonna give up this fight. No way. So let's get out of this place we're in. The walls of tyranny are closing in. Let's get out of this place we're in. We're getting out of this place we're in. Let's get out. Let's get out. Let's get out.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Rob Wolfe. Rob, awesome job, my friend. You are a truly talented artist. Very much proud to display your music on the show. Great homegrown talent right there, ladies and gentlemen. Now, what I have here is a short interview. It only goes for about 3 minutes, so you can hear from Rob himself and the inspiration behind his music. Check this out. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have Rob with us. Rob, welcome to MCJ Report. Now, first of all, let's start off by allowing me to ask, what was the inspiration for you in writing and performing the song that we just played for our audience?
Oh, wow. Well, I think we were in about the 12th week of the Sydney lockdown, and it was just the emotions were just bubbling over, and I hadn't written a song in a while, and I just had to do something. So it just all came out. I wrote it the night before, recorded it the next day, and then made the video the day after that.
I absolutely love it. Now, when we look at some of the mainstream artists in our country, Rob, we see a lot of radio silence. Excuse the pun. We see artists seemingly advocating for the government, not really standing against the government, which is something we've seen from a lot of musical artists throughout history. Do you have any thoughts in regards to why that might be?
Yes, I agree with you. And I was waiting for artists to write songs about this, but or at least speak out. But the only thing I can think of is either they don't want to bite the hand that feeds them, or they just don't want to lose fans. Being an independent small artist, I don't have a lot of fans, so I got nothing to lose.
Well,
But,
I tell you
yeah.
what, I think that might be about to change. We've seen other independent artists from different countries around the world rising up with their music, standing against the government. Do you have a message you would like to get out there to the people of Australia or people around the world who are feeling very much under pressure by all of these COVID policies?
I would say don't give up. We are the majority. This has nothing to do with a virus or a vaccine. It's tyranny versus freedom. We can unite and we can stand against tyranny.
Thank you very much. Now, Rob, I'm a big fan of your music myself. I love your style, your genre. How can people at home follow you and stay up to date with your music and upcoming songs?
At the moment, my YouTube place is the best place, Rob Wolfe Music. I've got an Instagram, Rob Wolfe Music as well. I'm trying to get this song out on Spotify. There's been a delay, but I'm hoping it won't be long before this song is on Spotify.
That's absolutely brilliant. So, ladies and gentlemen, you heard it at home. That is Rob Wolfe Music. No, Rob.
Yep, Rob Wolfe Music. So
Okay,
YouTube, just search
I'll
Rob
edit
Wolfe
that bit
Music.
out, no worries.
Okay.
All right, so ladies and gentlemen, you heard it. That is Rob Wolfe Music on Instagram and also YouTube. The link is in the description of this video. So make sure that you go and support Rob. It's important to support homegrown music, but especially homegrown music that is sticking it to the establishment. So Rob, thank you so much for doing what you do. You are a talented artist and we're really looking forward to hearing more of your music.
Thank you so much, Morgan. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, a huge thank you to Rob. We really appreciate your talent and your music. Also, an apology. I was, of course, meant to edit out my own blooper. Silly me, rushing to get things done. So I do apologize to Rob and the audience for that one. Just went over my head. I hope that you guys forgive me. A little bit embarrassing, but just got to get on with the show at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen. So Rob, thank you. And I think I speak on behalf of a lot of people when I say that I would love to see you performing in front of a crowd of thousands or tens of thousands of freedom lovers. And I am quietly confident that will happen. All right, now, ladies and gentlemen, this just about takes us to the end of the show. Now, this has become a little bit of a theme on MCJ Report, that's right. Hearing from Berkey, I really enjoy his commentary and insight in relation to this corona mess that has been inflicted upon us. He is Aussie 65 Larrikin on TikTok. I have a clip here. It goes for about a couple of minutes, and I think that you'll enjoy his commentary. I'm going to play it for you now.
I tell you what, I fucking tell you what I fucking love. I tell you what I love, what I fucking hate, right? So you put up a post. Disagreeing with the government, or you might mention the word communism or dictatorship or draconian and etc. And you always get one or two dickheads, in my opinion, dickheads, who say to you, oh, if we were living in a communist country, you wouldn't be able to even post that. You wouldn't even be able to say that. Well, guess what, fuckwits? Newsflash. We're going down that road right this fucking second. Nice and fresh, yes, but at the end of the day, right down the track, we won't be able to say fucking jack shit. It'll be zip it up or you'll be put away. Police are already going to people's houses. Already paying visits to people who post certain things on social fucking media. So there goes your free speech out the fucking window. Police visiting people for what they say on social media? That's fucking laughable. You can't even have an opinion, see? Ulterior to the government. Or the police knock on your door. What? So what's that? What's that to you trolls, you dickheads? What is that? Is that not a form of, control? Is that not a form of control the people? Shut your mouth or you're in trouble, you get a visit from the police. I've never heard anyone incite violence. I've never heard anyone threaten anybody. But this is what they're doing. You know, they've got some clause, you know, they've got a way around it where they come around your house and say you're inciting violence when you haven't done any such fucking thing. And you bullshit about, you know, you like I said, you couldn't say that in a communist country. Well, you fucking can't say it here. Because half the shit people like myself put up gets taken down. Gets taken down because I'm not suiting the narrative. I'm disagreeing with what the government are doing maybe, or etc., or what the police are doing, etc. Because this is not fucking Australia. This is not remotely Australia these days. So don't tell me that, you know, we're not going down the communist road. Oh, you wouldn't be able to say that in China. You couldn't even say anything in China. Well, guess what? Fuckhead. We're going straight down that road very quickly. Yeah, you people are fucked in the head.
All right, a thank you to Berkey for always telling it as it is. All right, now, ladies and gentlemen, just before I forget, I strongly encourage you to follow Rob on YouTube. It's Rob Wolfe Music. The link is in the description of this video. I think it's really important to support homegrown talent. So that's Rob Wolfe Music on YouTube and on all the other socials as well. All right, now that pretty much brings us to the end of the broadcast, ladies and gentlemen. So let me just take it back here to the monologue screen. I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in. Now we've replenished the supplies at the MCJ shop. So if you'd like to grab yourself a t-shirt or a hoodie and support the show, you can do so at mcjreport.com/shop. We're going to have probably another pretty big show in store for tomorrow evening. We have the great Professor Ian Brighthope, our very own from Melbourne, Australia. He'll be jumping on board the broadcast to discuss some COVID matters and also to discuss natural immunity. We're also having Andrew back on the show, and there are other segments that will be filled up during the day tomorrow as well. So I'd like to thank everybody who tuned in this evening, everybody on Rumble and on YouTube. I can see you all in the comments. It is great to have you here. I see a lot of familiar names, as I do every night. And MCJ Report will be back tomorrow night, right here, 8 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Time. And I will play the outro music now and hang out in the chat for a bit. So wherever you are in the world, enjoy your dinner or lunch or breakfast, whatever you're happening. Stay strong, hold the line.